All right, I hope everybody enjoyed the first video. Continuing on into the first part of section 3, I will do my best to keep this video under 15 minutes for you guys so that way you can get on to other homework. All right, so starting off with section 3, during the 1950s, the Cold War spread to new locations around the world at home. And, well, at home be a little different. We're going to have a senator doing some anti communist crusades that are going to ruin many people's careers, but in the end, he will ultimately fail to do his end goal. So we will talk a little bit about HUAC again today and talk a little bit more about the Hollywood 10 as well. So if you haven't watched those extra videos from yesterday, please make sure you do so. And I will also be adding some more videos in the description later for you guys to watch based on today's notes. So, conflict in Korea is going to lead to a hot war, as we're going to call it, or a war of armed aggression with combat and killing. Remember, we're in the middle of the Cold War, but because of Korea and what's going to happen there, the Cold War will temporarily turn into a hot war, but not directly between the USSR and the United States. So, a little background information. After World War II, Korea was divided into two occupation zones along the 38th parallel. Eventually, the division became permanent as two separate governments, each claiming to be the rightful government of Korea, would be established. So, if you can take a guess, probably one of them will be controlled partially by the USSR and the other will be controlled by the United States. South Korea had a democratic government under Syngman Rhee, and North Korea had a communist government under Kim Sung Il, and it will be backed by the USSR. Now, Kim Sung Il is the grandfather of the current ruler Kim Jong Un. So it has been a family dynasty running North Korea since the founding of it. In June of 1950, a hot war will break out in Korea as North Korean forces will cross the 38th parallel and are going to start to capture vast areas of South Korea. Now you got to remember both were claiming to be the proper government of Korea, but North Korea will invade South Korea and try to become the main dominating government. At this point, the United Nations Security Council will take action, and they're going to be able to do so and do so to defend South Korea because the USSR was currently boycotting the UN in order to protest the organization's exclusion of Communist China. So we talked about it yesterday when Taiwan formed, the United States backed Taiwan to become the main government of China, and so the Taiwanese or Chinese government in Taiwan will become the seat holder on for the Big Five, considering for China, and the communist portion of China, which is mainland China, will basically not be recognized by the United Nations Security Council. And because of this, the USSR is currently boycotting it, which means, well, they can't veto the whole action taken by the UN Security Council. So the UN does actually get involved in the Korean War. General Douglas MacArthur will be chosen by Truman to head the UN forces in this quote unquote police action, as the UN called it. And though viewed as a hero by the public, many political leaders felt that MacArthur will be a little too ambitious when he takes on this war. So, right here we have a map. As you can see, the original 38th parallel runs right here. And so, this little blue dotted line is all that was left when the UN got involved. The UN were able to push forces now all the way back up to this yellow line, which is basically the Yalu River right here, separating North Korea from China, specifically the province of Manchuria. So, that being said, this yellow line here is going to be the pushback. Now, problem will be, as you're going to find out, is UN forces will succeed in forcing North Koreans all the way back to the Yalu River on the Chinese border by November of 1950. So they first showed up in September and August of 1950, push all the way back to the Yalu River by November of 1950. So it's only going to take 3 or 4 months for them to get to this point. Problem will be when Chinese troops will reinforce the North Korean lines, and MacArthur's forces will be once again driven back to the 38th parallel, where stalemate will develop. Now, China never actually took really any credit for the invasion of the Chinese troops to reinforce the North Koreans. China's official statement was along the lines of they took it upon themselves to do it on their own. But, well, as you can see, that's probably not going to be the truth with the communist government China trying to back the North Korean government, North Korean communist government. So MacArthur at this point will propose to break the stalemate with a second front by bringing Jiang Jiexi's nationalist forces back to China. However, Truman is not going to like this idea, so he shoots him down. And remember, the president is the commander in chief of all armed forces, so yes, MacArthur does have to do whatever he says. However, MacArthur doesn't like this no answer, so he's going to try to go over Truman's head and appeal to Congress now for support of his plan. And at this point, Truman will promptly fire MacArthur and replace him. The Korean conflict would drag on for another 2 years with really no significant progress until a truce was signed in 1953, which divided Korea as before at the 38th parallel. So we're going to flip back to that map real quick for you guys. And you see this dotted line right here? This dotted line is still the border of Korea till this day. So really, nothing is going to end up changing because of the Korean War. Now, the failure of the Korean War to reunite Korea will cause many Americans to wonder if our government was even serious about stopping communism. And at this point, Republican Senator Joseph McCarthy will seize the issue in order to grab national attention and really bring a lot of attention to himself and the fact that there can be these communist issues that our US government just isn't trying to stop. So McCarthy will make outrageous accusations and have a really big disregard for the truth and constitutional rights, and he's going to destroy the lives of many loyal Americans during the Red Scare of the 1950s, which, yes, I will be posting a video about that in the description here in a little bit. Now, in 1954, McCarthy's quest for fame and power will lead him to attack members of the U.S. Army. And finally, political and military leaders at this point will decide that McCarthy has to be stopped. Now, McCarthy was also the one going after the Hollywood 10 that we talked about yesterday and was really going after a lot of government officials. However, it wasn't until he went after the military and the Army specifically that people really started to shoot him down and really did whatever it took to take the power away from him. And Democrats at this time asked the Army/McCarthy hearings that are going to be held in April of 1954 to be televised in hopes that the public would recognize McCarthy for the liar and bully he was. So MacArthur's like, all right, yeah, you guys want this televised? We'll televise it because now you're going to make me look really good as I make the Army look really bad because they're failing to stop communism, containing it to where it really is. So these televised debates are basically going to be a trap for McCarthy by the Democrats. And by the time the hearings ended in June of 1954, McCarthy will lose all support and be condemned by the U.S. Senate for his reckless actions. And at this point, his influence was at an end, and he would die a few years later. And eventually, this second Red Scare, much like the one that followed World War I, will subside or basically end. However, the nation will be damaged by the era suppression of free speech and open and honest debate. So people weren't really allowed to criticize the government during this time period of the 1950s because if they did, then it was really easy for someone to point a finger at them and say they were communists. They'll be brought before the HUAC committee or another government branch. And at this point, people are going to be really afraid. Now, in 1952, President Truman will end his 2 terms in office, and the Cold War will continue in the 1950s as President Eisenhower takes over from Truman in 1952. Eisenhower will then be reelected in 1956, so he will spend 8 years running U.S. policy and the Cold War. So this will be our last section we'll cover today about Europe. In Europe, Eisenhower supported Truman's containment policy towards communism, and despite calls for tougher action from Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, Eisenhower refrained from armed confrontations with the Soviet Union in Eastern Europe. Eisenhower realized after being high up during World War II and running the D-Day invasion European campaign that war isn't necessarily the end all solutions, and it's not going to be a good thing if the US goes to war with the Soviet Union in Eastern Europe. However, in Asia, Eisenhower is going to take a stronger stand against communism. So basically, Eisenhower realizes that, well, in Europe, everything's pretty solidified there, nothing's really going to change. But in Asia, there's going to be a big shift in governments there. In July of 1953, Eisenhower brought an end to the Korean War with the signing of a formal ceasefire in Korea with the Treaty of Panmunjom. And by 1945, though, Vietnam is going to be a test for U.S. containment policies. So, Korean War is over in July of 1953, and now we're going to start focusing on Vietnam, which we will revisit in a couple chapters. So after World War II, Communist leader Ho Chi Minh declared Vietnam's independence from France and led a revolution against French forces. So, shortly after World War II, while France is still weak, Ho Chi Minh will rise up, and he is a communist leader, and he will lead a revolution against French leadership. By 1954, the United States was supporting France with military aid because of what we had called the domino theory. This is going to be a huge thing that you guys will need to remember. And this is a theory and a belief that if one country falls to communists, then its neighbors would follow. So if Vietnam falls, then we're going to be worried about Cambodia, Thailand, etc., going all the way across. And in May of 1954, France will agree to give up Vietnam, and the country will be divided into two nations along the 17th parallel. Communist North Vietnam would be led by Ho Chi Minh, and a quote unquote democratic government will be set up in South Vietnam, and elections were to be held within 2 years in order to unite the nation now. So this democratic government is basically going to be propped up by the United States, and people aren't going to be a big fan of that government in South Vietnam. So as years pass, U.S. aid to South Vietnam will start to increase more and more. And so just a little bit more. And we're actually going to end there, sorry. So this will be the end of today's notes. Please complete the Google form in the description. I'll have several extra videos for you guys in the description. And your homework today looks like it will be questions number 40 through looks like 55. So 40 through 55 are your questions for homework tonight. And I will have another one posted for you guys on Wednesday to continue on and hopefully be the end of section 3. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. If for some reason these videos aren't working for you or you need more of an explanation, also please email me. But make sure you get those Google forms done and your question packets done, because when we do get back at some point, I will be collecting those for a grade for you guys. So hope you guys get out, enjoy the nice day we're having today on Monday, and Tuesday also looks pretty well, so take advantage of it, get outside, and have some fun.